Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live, coming at you 5 days a week. Again, we're always off on Wednesday and Thursday during the season, but we have the gambling and the DFS show today. I'm here with John Ryan of RotoWire College Football, RotoWire NFL, the Predictive Playbook Sports Channel. You can always catch John there. You can find him on Twitter at John Ryan1, the number 1 at the end of that. John is, I tell people this all the time. There are tons of shows about gambling that are out there on the internet, YouTube, wherever. Watch what you're going to. John Ryan is a 28-year sports bettor. Almost 3 decades he's been doing this. John is a documented winner. John puts his picks up early. He doesn't wait until kickoff to put up when it's too late to put a bet in. If you work with John, John will help get you to the finish line. Nobody wins 100% of the games, but John, 10-unit bets the last 4 years, 68%. Remember, if you're over 52.5% or so, you're cashing, you're making money. And NFL and college football alone, the last 3 years, he's 65%. In the last 3 weeks, and John and I will talk NFL here, but in the last 3 weeks, John told listeners of this show that if you messaged him, he would give you his 10-unit bet in college football. 3 weeks in a row, they all hit comfortably. Games where a team was an underdog, they'd win outright. And, my brain is so overloaded, I can't even tell you. Ole Miss was the one last week. Alabama the week prior. I can't remember the third week back now because that's 3 weeks ago. I'm old. 3 weeks is that's a long time ago. But John Ryan, tell everybody how things are going.
It couldn't be better, Jim. I appreciate that introduction. And like you said, we lose these 10-unit bets 32% of the time, so there is no such thing as a guaranteed lock of the year or game of the year. You and I are grinders, and that's the way the professionals do it. We don't know who's going to win or lose today, let alone against the spread, but we have methods that work, and especially with Jim's work on DFS, I go to him only for my DraftKings, and it has made me money. So we help each other, no doubt there.
It's true. So basically, I don't handicap games like John does. You don't want that betting advice from me. You want it from an expert like John. Player props, I'm 61.2%. I'm not at John's level of percentage. I'm trying to get there.
That's still pretty good.
Yeah, we're still over. Sauger, good morning. And anyway, on my Twitter at Jim Coventry NFL, I do post my prop bets. And on Twitter, the threads, I give the explanations. So only bet them if you agree with the explanation. If you think, nope, don't buy it, don't bet it. All right, let's get into some games here, John. We're going to do a game first here. So we have another London game, second of 3 weeks in a row. Weeks 4, 5, and 6 we'll have them. The Jaguars actually stayed in London because they played there last week. So that's a new one for us. We've never seen this before, a set of players being acclimated. But the Bills come in. The Bills are looking like the team they were before Josh Allen messed his elbow up last year. This was last year before that elbow injury. This team was the favorite with Kansas City to win the AFC, and they blew out Miami last week. John, how do you – one more thing. They'll be without their left defensive end, Gregory Rousseau, in this one, and they did lose their cornerback, Tre'Davious White, but they should get back Von Miller. The Jaguars get their left tackle, Cam Robinson, back, who was suspended, and they will now. That's a big boost to their line because potentially they could take the player who is subbing for Robinson and move him to the right tackle, maybe shoring up that line. How do you handicap Bills Jaguars, John?
I'll tell you, those are great points. I think they offset one another. The biggest thing, I think, is the left tackle coming back for Jacksonville, and I studied that all week. That offense is just not clicking right now. They could have the best left tackle in the history of the game, and I don't see any difference in the execution, especially against a Buffalo defense that held Miami pretty well contained last week in their big win, and that was a big divisional win. So I think Buffalo, even though they have to travel across the pond, so to speak, I think that's already baked into the number. And any price below 6, I think, is a tremendous value here to get the Buffalo Bills, who on both sides of the ball are clearly the better team. In terms of team trends here, Jacksonville is just 12-27 against the number in road games after a double-digit win. So that works against them too, even though they stayed over there and got acclimated perhaps better than what Buffalo's doing. I just don't see it working out. Buffalo is 36-19 against the number, following a game in which they allowed 6.5 or more yards per play in their previous game. So that sounds like it was an awful game, but let's not forget it was the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins are a real team. They are a real contending team. They put up 70 points. I don't care if it was against a college football team. You put up 70 points in the NFL and not one defensive pick six, not one defensive score, not one special team score among that 70 points. You're doing something pretty special. Jacksonville does not have an offense like Miami. I don't care what day of the week it is or where they're playing. So I think Buffalo here, Jim, is the team to take at anything below 6. And of course, my live in-game betting, you want to try to start out here. Like if you're betting $100, maybe put 70 down pre-flop on Buffalo if you like my pick. And then use the $30 then in the first half and see how close you can get to a number that might be close to pick. Maybe Jacksonville comes storming out and they get out to a 10-0 lead. There was 32 games last year, Jim, where both teams had at least a 7-point lead. So scoring volatility is up across the league again this year, and you just got to allow it to work in your favor, and that's the best way I know how.
You know, John, in addition, and again, John gives you all this fantastic analysis to help you nail the winners. And him, 65% rate the last 3 years, NFL and NCAA football. We'll also mention in this game, look, that Bills offense, not just are they putting numbers up, but for the first time really in years, they have a real rushing attack. James Cook, and I know the numbers aren't always great, but he is offering something they haven't had in the running game. Even Latavius Murray and Damian Harris in their 5 carries each per game. They are functioning in the role and helping to give this offense a more rounded approach. And just again, don't forget, this is the same Bills offense, maybe better than before Allen's elbow injury last year. So just from an X's and O standpoint, I don't see how the Jaguars are able to slow this offense down. But John gave you all the best reasons, but just I had the NFL side point that I see like from the X's and O's. I mean, it matches up. John is on this. I would follow him on that one as well for sure. Also in the chat, we got Sauger, John, Rubright, and Charlene. Welcome in. Glad you're here today. We got other people in the house. Thanks for being with us. I'm going to do a few DFS picks. So last week, now again, 4 weeks, I've given you a cheap quarterback. Last week, the lowest I could go was 5,500, but Purdy hit. Purdy definitely cashed for that. So we're 4 for 4. The bottom's going to fall out some week. You're not going to be like John. You can't win them all. But I'll give you some quarterbacks. And I'll give you a low price one again, the one where we'll hold our nose and hopefully it cashes. So look, I don't often take the highest paid quarterbacks on the board. So, but this week I am going to Patrick Mahomes. Basically, here's Minnesota's deal. Minnesota knows they don't have talented personnel in their secondary. So what they do is they go a heavy dime package often, 6 defensive backs. They'll get 3 safeties on the field. And what they have to do is they basically will blitz. They did it every game when they faced Justin Herbert. He completed like 80% of his passes because here's what's happening. Something's got to give, right? When you're dropping bodies in coverage and you're blitzing, the middle of the field is vacated. Well, that's what I said in that game. Justin Herbert's just going to eat them underneath, and he did. Well, Patrick Mahomes, of course he's going to do the same thing here because Patrick Mahomes takes what the defense gives him. And so it's going to be not like death by 1,000 paper cuts. These are bigger than paper cuts. Instead of 20, 30-yard games, these are 10 and 15-yard games. These aren't dinks and dunks. That's going to be open all game. And who buys time better than Mahomes? So pay up for Mahomes if you're going to go that way. Charlene says she loves coffee and talking football in the morning. Yes, that's the way to do it. Look, Tua Tagovailoa is 7,100 against the Giants. And basically last week, a lot of people saw against Buffalo, oh, man, not so great. Well, think about this. Buffalo was a divisional opponent. Buffalo, as veteran defense, they understood how to disrupt the timing for those Miami receivers. And the thing Tua can't do is he can't feather a ball over coverage. When you get in the intermediate area, so I saw Buffalo was doing that, and there were a couple passes where he just sailed it. Anyway, they're playing the Giants this week. The Giants can't cover. The Giants get a sporadic pass rush. Nothing to worry about. Now, I know left tackle Teron Armstead's out, but there is no way that the Giants defense can deal with the speed of Tyreek Hill, first of all, then Waddle, and even the running backs in the receiving game. I would not be surprised if the Dolphins dropped 50. And I'm not going to talk too much longer on this, but in this overall game, remember, this game is in Miami. It's going to be 84 degrees. And guess what Miami does to their opponents? They make them stand on the sunny side of the field and they fry, while Miami is in the shaded side of the field. And it's a definite tactical advantage until the weather gets cooler. All right, quickly on these. Jared Goff, 6,300 against Carolina. You hear me say it about every other week. You play Jared Goff at home. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown is doubtful. I get it. But look, they got Khalif Raymond. I don't know what Jameson Williams' role is going to be. Reynolds is a bit banged up, but Laporta is going to be busy. They will get it done. Carolina can't cover. J.C. Horn is out. Their free safety is out. Goff will get it done regardless of who is on the field. 60, but I like the more expensive plays better. He's your middling play, your cheap one. Hold your nose. All right, get ready. Ryan Tannehill, 4,900 at Indianapolis. Indianapolis is what we call one of those pass funnel defenses. They're not quite as lights out against the run as they were last year, but they're very good against the run. But their secondary is horrible. Matter if they're going with rookie Juju Brent. The guy Dallas Flowers, he's on the IR. Though I don't know why a name's evading. They usually have all these names down at the back of my head, but they're not good. They can't cover. And DeAndre Hopkins is healthy now. I know Treylon Burks out. Doesn't matter. Chiggy Okonkwo gets a little more involved. But at 4,900, this game could be a sneaky shootout. Tannehill's your cheap play. All right, running back. Let's go to a few here. David Montgomery, 6,600 against Carolina. Not only was this a great matchup anyway, in the two healthy games, he's seeing well over 20 carries. He's seeing all the goal line work. He's improperly priced. He should be like 7,600. That's a great, and Jahmyr Gibbs popped up on the injury report Friday with a hamstring. So, wow, could Montgomery even get more work? James Conner, 5,800 against Cincinnati. He finally has a reasonable matchup. This is not the Cincinnati defense of last year or the year before. This defense is not good against the run. I think they're in the bottom 8 in rushing yards allowed, and Conner just gets it done every week, even with tough opponents. This is not a tough opponent this year. Last one, Isaiah Pacheco, 5,700 against Minnesota. I said earlier, they're going to blitz. They're going to drop coverage. Pacheco is going to get many yards before contact on a high number of his carries. All right, I'll shut up, John. I carried on a bit too long. John, we're going to cover your next game, and then we'll go to Charlene's question before we get to a little more. John, so we have the Texans and the Falcons. Couple interesting teams. I think we were really excited about the Falcons and their quarterbacks making mistakes. That's what they didn't want him to do. They knew he wasn't good, but he's turning the ball over, and that's really shooting them in the foot. Their defense has improved, but the organizational plan right now isn't working because the quarterback's hurting them. The Texans, super well coached. They're flying around on defense. That was not a surprise. And offensively, Bobby Slowick is bringing in those 49er principles, and they're working. A lot of these coaches come over and they don't. Tell us who you like in the Texans versus the Falcons. Texans are getting 1.5 points here.
Yeah, I think the wrong team's favored, Jim. I've been on the Texans, as you know, the last couple of weeks, and this team is definitely on the rise, and the market has not paid attention to that, for lack of a better explanation. I think if they win this game, then you'll see the market adjust, and the betting community will want to ride the winning team. But by then, it's too late to take advantage of the value I see in this matchup. For example, betting against favorites like Atlanta, that's a poor turnover defense, that they're only forcing fewer than one turnover per game. And that works to the Texans' advantage because they're well coached. As you said, they're not going to make mistakes that end up hurting them and costing them a game. So a team that forces less than one turnover per game, and coming off a game where they themselves committed 3 or more turnovers, you bet against those guys, and the success rate is 79% against the number, 48-13 over the last 10 seasons. It's only had 10 losses in 10 seasons. So this is pretty darn good. And each one of these bets, whether win or lose, has 39% of them have covered the spread by 7 or more points. So I really like the Texans here quite a bit, just based on that and my predictive model. I think Again, the wrong team is favored. If you like the money line, jump on it. And I wouldn't use the live in-game split here. I think Houston gets out to a lead early and just never looks back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how the Falcons are improved on defense. I'm not going to take that from them. But the Texans, even without an offensive line, they've been down 4 offensive linemen since week 2. They were down 3 in week 1. And CJ Stroud does nothing but get it done week after week. John, I think that's another brilliant call on that. John Ryan is giving you the Texans plus 1.5 over the Falcons. But John, before I get to some more DFS, Charlene had a question. She wants to know a couple points about the Dallas. I'll put them up on the screen real quick here. So she said, would you go over rather than under in the 49ers Dallas? Dallas averages 30 points per game, and the 49ers average 30 points per game. So overall, do we have an over and under number on this game? Let me see if I can find it real quick. Over and under on the Dallas game is 45, exactly. Are you have any lean on that, John?
Well, I think it's going to be smash mouth football here. Edge to the 49ers being at home. But Dallas is a Jekyll and Hyde type of team. So it's kind of difficult to determine what they're going to do, especially when they're on the road, where they kind of didn't show up one week against Arizona and had it handed to them. It cost me 2 entries in the Circus Survivor. So I'll never forget Dallas for that. But in this game, Dallas, they averaged over 30 points a game last season and so far this season at home. They're a different team on the road. So I think the 49er defense is the best defense in the NFL. I would lean to the under on this. And again, use the volatility. Dallas's offense could come out screaming before San Fran makes the adjustments to shut them down. That will give you an opportunity to possibly get a bet in at 49.5, maybe even the low 50s during the first half of action. Generally speaking, the first quarter and the third quarter are your lower scoring quarters because teams like this, especially in a matchup like this, are going to be like a boxing match. You're going to feel each other out. You're not going to make mistakes that blow you out of the game early. So I think you look at that second quarter, maybe you play the second quarter over. But at the end of the day, just use that volatility to get higher prices during the first half. And I'm pretty confident you're going to see something higher than 45 during the first half of this game.
And then, Charlene, another thing I want to point out is Dallas, they're scoring these points, but remember how they're scoring them. They have a lot, what do they have? 3 defensive touchdowns already. Yep. They've got a bunch of short fields. They played some bad teams, and they've gotten some great field position, and that is accelerated the scoreboard. And the 49ers, to a degree, they are clearly a better offensive team, moving the ball at will, but they're also benefiting from they played the Giants one week, shortened possessions by the opposition, which extends their possessions. And so this is a game where if both offenses play their game, there may not be the amount of short fields. So teams may have to earn the points. And so I'm with John on this. I think it's more probable it ends up on the underside because there will be punts in this game. These defenses are both good enough to slow down the opposition. And when Brock Purdy, like all quarterbacks are not as good when they're pressured, but Brock Purdy, we saw it when they played Dallas last time. When Dallas was getting after him, it was a rough situation. And the right tackle, Cole McKivitz, I would be stunned if Dallas didn't put Micah Parsons there a lot, because it's every snap, it's a mismatch. Now we got Trent Williams on the other side, and he's a legend. I would sacrifice DeMarcus Lawrence to him, but Micah Parsons could really change this game. All right, John, we move on. Some DFS plays, wide receiver. All right, I mentioned Tua earlier. Tyreek Hill. This is the week you pay up. Last week, we didn't. 9,000 is a lot, but look, I talked about that speed. And when Tyreek gets those games in those mismatches, the Giants have no way to answer for him, especially with the short motion they're using now. This could be one of those Tyreek Hill 200-yard games. And these I'd say 170. It could be one of those 170 games. And we could see a couple touchdowns here easily. Tyreek should be in position to go nuclear here. Michael spending that down now. Michael Pittman, 6,400 against Tennessee. We talk about Tennessee. Amazing against the run, but they are not good against the pass. And Michael Pittman has 11 or 12 targets in 3 of 4 games, and kind of look for that type of target volume to return. And at 6,400, if you're seeing 11 or 12 targets, there's a lot of different ways you could cash. Nico Collins is only 5,600 against Atlanta. I don't think DraftKings is, and some of the places setting props have picked up on how good he is. He had the 130-yard game. He's been putting up massive yardage in his other games. He is a clear and proper ex-alpha receiver in Bobby Slowick's offense where he is schemed open and in his space. He gets the ball, and there's immediate yards after the catch. He's breaking tackles. He is an alpha receiver who's being priced like a mid-range guy. Marquise Hollywood Brown is 5,000 against the Bengals. I said earlier, the Bengals, they had the good Monday night game against the Rams. This is not the same Bengals defense we've seen in the past. And Marquise Brown is getting 7 to 10 targets. It's an average of 9 over the last 3 games. His floor has been great. He's scored in 2 of his last 3 games, but he is definitely a player who is undervalued right now. Josh Dobbs is getting it done. Now, I'm gonna throw one spend down out here, but this is tournament only. Don't play this in cash. Rashid Shaheed is 3,800 against New England. New England, Christian Gonzalez, their best corner, has an injury. They have 2 corners on IR. They are hurt badly in their secondary. They lost Matthew Judon, who arguably is the key to their pass rush. And we know that even though there's not a corner who can handle Chris Olave on that team, if Bill Belichick does what he does, and that's try to take away the best option, that means Shaheed's speed is going to be available. I know Derek Carr's shoulder is not great, but I do know without Matthew Judon, Carr is not going to be under much pressure as he usually would be. So 3,800, that's a dart throw, okay? That's not a slam dunk, but if you're looking to take a shot, that's a shot to take. Tight end, Sam Laporta has 5,000 against Carolina. Amon-Ra St. Brown is doubtful. Laporta's getting a ton of targets in production anyway, but without St. Brown, Laporta could see an additional 3 or so targets because St. Brown usually gets around 8 to 9. Those middle of the field targets probably go that way. Tyler Conklin is 3,200 at Denver. We have seen him get 5 to 7 targets in every game Zach Wilson started. That is a thing. When teams send pressure, the relief valve's been Conklin. At 3,200, he has a good floor for you. Jonnu Smith at 2,900 against Houston. Do you know he is seeing more targets and he has more yardage than Kyle Pitts in the last 3 weeks? He's a dart throw. He could disappear any week. But for 3 straight weeks, he has been a part of that offense. Finally, the defensive special teams. The Titans, 2,400. This is a spend down. I always look for a spend down. Titans, 2,400 in Indianapolis. Look, rookie quarterback Richardson's playing well. The Titans can, Tierre Tart, the defensive tackle, is out, but Jeffrey Simmons is fine. They do get some interior pressure. They can cause sacks and turnovers. And then this one also, this is again, 2,700 Steelers against the Ravens. I think the Ravens are going to be great in this game, but we know the Steelers with that pass rush, it's a divisional game. They can cause some turnovers and maybe turn one into a fumble 6. So those are the 2 cheap ones. Before we get to John's last pick, Car Chisel, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is a great play this week. I have him on my prop thread at Jim Coventry NFL. I definitely think he covers his prop. I do think that the Steelers are way worse against the run than they've been in the past, and they're without Cam Hayward, their defensive end. His backup is also out. Also, their outside linebacker, Alex Highsmith, he is iffy to play. Don't know if he, but even if he does play, Gus Edwards is a great play this week, and not playing Gibbs, especially with a hammy on the injury report. All right, John Ryan, we have one more game to handicap here. So, John, when this game came out, I was stunned. I didn't understand how the Jets were underdogs. The Broncos, to me, are one of the worst teams in the league. And people are talking about Russell Wilson playing well this year. Yeah, when they're getting blown out, he's looking pretty decent when they're getting blown out. But before then, to me, he's not doing anything when the game is in hand. It's like he's a 0. He's not horrible, but he's not this always a new player. I don't see it. And the other thing is, Sean Payton completely disrespected Nathaniel Hackett, who's now the offensive coordinator with the Jets. He said it was the worst coaching job like ever when he was with there. This game to me is interesting. But how do you see it, John? Jets are getting 2.5 here.
Well, I see it the same way. And, it's so funny that what comes around goes around. And, we know it better than anybody else. You just don't put anybody down, especially a colleague. You just don't do it. And now he's going to have to eat crow, and he might have to eat a lot of it because I think the Jets are going to win this game. I was very impressed with Zach Wilson in the loss to Kansas City. He didn't fold under the pressure. The team actually played better, especially along that offensive line, which, as you know, has had a multitude of injuries and players playing out of position. So it doesn't always fall on Zach Wilson like the New York media just seems to have a frenzy about just bashing the poor guy when he's out there trying to do the best with what he has. Daniel Jones, the same situation, the Giants. It's not Daniel Jones. That pick 6 for 97 yards was because the tight end didn't recognize the coverage, should have done a button hook with a little lean towards the sideline, and it would have been completed instead of picked off for 97 yards. So, it's got to be very, very frustrating for Jones, but I think the tide has turned for the Jets. And I'm willing to go on the line here on this show, Jim, and say that they got 9 wins on the season, which means they have to win 8 games from now. And it starts tomorrow afternoon in Mile High. So they win that game. And they have a difficult assignment with the Eagles, but they're at home. They then have a bye week, and then they play the Giants. I would think the Jets beat the Giants if I'm right about them turning the tide. And say the Jets do win by double digits tomorrow. Then I think you're going to hear a much more positive tone. That obviously implies that Zach Wilson might have thrown for 2 or 3 touchdowns against this very, very poor defense that actually, Jim, they're going back to 2000. They are the worst defense for the first 4 weeks of any regular season, no matter what stat you look at, DVOA, yards per point allowed. I mean, just pick the stat, and it's going to be among the worst, if not the worst, in the last 23 football seasons. And you don't turn that around with an offensive-minded coach like Sean Payton. Sorry, Sean, you're a great offensive coordinator, offensive coach, head coach. You have a Super Bowl ring. It's all great. But that defense is going to cost you a lot of wins until they figure it out. They're going to lose more games than they're going to win, no matter what Russell Wilson does. So in this game, we have a really good betting system here, Jim. I'll share with you. We're simply going to bet on road teams priced between the threes, and that's a common term. That means as a 3-point favorite all the way through to a 3-point underdog. The host is coming off a 2-game road trip, which the Denver Broncos are. The game occurs in weeks 5 through 8, and those weeks are pretty critical. They're pivot points to determining a team's ability to get to the playoffs, contend for the playoffs, or is the season really over? So in this case, that set of parameters, 38-17 to straight up, and the Jets are a dog. 36-16 with 3 pushes against the number. That's 69% last 10 years. And guess what? There's more. If the total is more than 42.5 points, the last I checked, it was 43.5. This improves to 31-10 straight up, 29-9 against the number for 76%. So of those bets I've given a system play on, these are 2 that you may want to put some pizza money on and maybe parlay them together, especially since they one of them is at least a dog. I think the Jets win this by double digits.
I am with you on that one. I mean, I don't get it. I know the Mile High, that's a home field advantage. It can't overcome a lot of what we're seeing between these two teams. I want to point out one more thing, John. The Jets have played a hellacious schedule to this point. I mean, this is the first game they've had that's like, oh, okay, it's manageable game. I mean, and I know they got crushed by Dallas. I get it, but they've been competitive otherwise, and they are a good team. They're a great defensive team. So anyway, excited to see this one. Remember, if anybody needs their start, sit questions answered, we will do the Sunday stream. We'll do that at 11 a.m. Eastern, usual time on where you're watching right now. So I know the London game's on, but keep that on and go ahead and pop questions in. Hang around for about an hour or so. We'll get them all answered for you, give you the why so you can make your best decision. If you have Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel 87, I will be on at 1 to 3 Eastern with Mario Puig. Tomorrow, Sunday, be on 9 a.m. Eastern with Alan Soslowski to get you ready for game day. John Ryan, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
Well, the best place to go is the predictiveplaybook.com. That site is being revamped as we go, but it looks pretty good now. I think you'll enjoy quite a bit. And also direct message me on the bird, as they call it, X. That my handle is at John Ryan Sports and the number 1. Either one, that works perfect.
All right, for John Ryan, I'm Jim Coventry. Again, see everybody Sunday for the Start Sit stream. Good luck, and hopefully we get some wins this weekend.